Hi, welcome to Tuesday Tips. I'm Pam Keslauskas, one of the trainers here at Navigate, and today we're going to be talking about how Navigate handles resident concerns. If you're in this business long enough, you know that you're going to get concerns about one thing or another. Residents must be advised of how to address concerns. So you should always have a grievance policy or let them know how they can get any concerns they have addressed. You do that by giving them their resident rights and responsibilities brochure. You should have the discrimination is illegal poster. You should hand them their how your rent is determined during research. Any fair housing postings, including VAWA, reasonable accommodation information. You should have your grievance policy posted where they can see it. And you should have the poster of the Navigate contact information. So all of those things help to inform residents of where they can address any concerns. Biggest thing to remember with resident concerns is you cannot please everybody. No matter what you do, some people are going to be unhappy with something. It may be something you did. It may be policies and procedures. Sooner or later down the road, somebody is going to be unhappy about something. In some cases, and we'd prefer that they address it right at the site level. They talk to the property manager and everything gets resolved. But sometimes they are going to go further than that and call someone. So how does Navigate receive concerns? Well, we get them from a number of different places. Either the resident calls us directly, family of the resident calls. Sometimes HUD gets a concern and they will ask us to follow up. Or sometimes we get what's called a congressional inquiry. So sometimes they'll call their congressman and their congressman will call with a concern. The important thing to remember with these concerns is that we're here to help. We want to assist in finding a solution. And if there's management noncompliance, of course, we're going to address that. But our prime role is to solve a problem or to help you solve the problem. Things that we won't do, we are not going to determine management policies. Management makes their own policies. We are not going to force a particular solution on anyone. And we're not going to insist on anything that's not a HUD requirement. So we may tell you that HUD says X, Y, or Z, but we're not going to force a solution on you. Things to keep in mind when concerns come in. It can be very challenging sometimes to deal with an escalated resident, whether they're raising their voice or whether you've explained something a number of times and they don't seem to be understanding it. It can sometimes be very difficult to deal with residents who are upset, especially if you're very busy and then you have a resident coming in with the same concern they brought to you 6 times. Things you need to keep in mind. Empathy. Remember that they're coming to you because they're upset or confused or frightened by something. For instance, HOTMA with all the new limitations, if somebody gets a notice on HOTMA and they don't quite understand it, it could be a very scary thing for them. So we always want to empathize. You want to keep in mind the difference between things that you must do, things that HUD says you should do, and things that HUD says you can do. They're very different things. And you always want to keep in mind how much flexibility you have. You want to pick your battles. Is something that HUD said a rule? Is it a must? Or is it a suggestion, should or can? And you always want to be aware of when you might want to make a reasonable accommodation. If somebody casually mentions a disability or the need for something or something that they're finding difficult, that's an opportunity for you to discuss a reasonable accommodation. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give a property manager is do not take these things personally. Many times somebody is agitated or escalated really because of something that has nothing to do with you. And then whatever happened to have them come into your office is just kind of the final straw or the trigger. Don't take it personally. Know when to walk away or take time to consider an answer. It's okay to say to someone, you know, I don't have an answer for you right now, but let me look into that and get back to you. Know when to disengage and continue a conversation later. If somebody is yelling and cursing at you, they're not really in a good position to listen and have a calm discussion. So it might be a time to say, hey, look, I can see that you're really upset about this. Why don't we set a time to talk about this later when you've had a chance to sit with it a little bit? But then by the same token, you're not going to accept unacceptable behavior. It's okay not to get cursed at. Management will have a policy for how you handle residents that are yelling or screaming or cursing at you. Make sure you follow that policy. You want to keep in mind phrasing things different ways can often get a very different result. So instead of focusing on what you can't do, offer solutions. Focus on what you can do. Instead of saying, nope, we can't do that, you might want to try saying, well, let me take a look at what we can do to help solve that for you. It just turns the conversation around into a more positive approach. Here's the navigate process. So when we get a complaint, the call or email comes in, we are going to speak with the complainant. We're going to speak with management and gather whatever information we need. We'll follow up as needed. We'll report to HUD as needed. One of the things I want to make you aware of is that we do sometimes have very short deadlines by which we need to update HUD. So that's why you will see one of our complaint resolution specialists that will say, hey, I need some more information from you and I need it by tomorrow. And that's why they may follow up with you in a very short amount of time. It's because HUD is asking us to follow up in a very short amount of time. So please respond promptly to any inquiries that you get from Navigate. If it's going to take you some time to gather information, please let us know what you're going to need to gather and when it will be available so that if we need to respond to HUD, we have that information. If the tenant happens to be under eviction, please let us know that as well. That will change how we handle complaints because once they're in legal action, we typically do not get involved in those concerns. Once it's gone to legal, it's a matter for the courts. The big thing to remember is we are not taking sides when we look at these concerns. We're required by HUD to assist with resolution. We ask questions of you to better understand the situation, not to, it doesn't show that we assume you're doing anything wrong. We're just trying to gather information. What you can do to help yourself out in these situations is document everything. Documentation is your best friend. Make sure that if you have questions that you asked a resident, things that you asked them to bring in and they didn't, if you have an interaction that becomes contentious, document all of those things because I don't know about you, but for me, something I did 6 months ago may not stick in my head very well. So writing it down right when I do it means that I can go back to that later and know exactly what that conversation was. Remember that we can suggest, but we can't insist on a particular solution unless it's a HUD requirement. So we're really looking to help you resolve a situation. No one likes complaints. Unfortunately, they're just part of working with people. They're always going to happen if you're in any kind of a position where you are dealing with other individuals. Our goal is to help resolve them, not to play the blame game. We're not looking to say that anybody did anything wrong. We're looking to find a solution and make sure everybody walks away as happy as possible. The best thing that you can do regarding concerns is to be proactive. Try to resolve them early and try to resolve them on your own and keep documentation of your efforts.